Let's rank the top 5 greatest literary villains of all time. Now, let me start by saying I don't think a great villain is the one who's committed the worst crimes. In fact, plenty of characters are more evil than the ones I've named on this list. What matters to me personally is whether they reveal something true about human nature that you can't unsee once you've met them. Now, with that being said, at number 5, I would put Big Brother from 1984. Now, what is remarkable to me about this is that Orwell managed to create one of the most famous villains in history without really giving him a face, right? He's not, in its essence, a person, right? He's more of an idea. And yet somehow that's even more unsettling, right? Because you can't defeat an idea the way you can defeat a man, as we see through the novel. And, well, it's quite frightening, especially given the current climate of the world. Now, in the fourth slot, I have Captain Ahab. Now, I've really never thought of him as evil in the ordinary sense. He's more of a tragic character, right? But there's something frightening, to me at least, about watching someone become so convinced they're right that everything else slowly stops mattering. The whale isn't really the enemy anymore, right? His own obsession is, and there's something very human about that. Very scary. At number 3 is Satan from Paradise Lost. Now, I think the reason he's endured isn't, because people admire him, obviously, it's because Milton understood that evil almost never introduces itself as evil. It comes dressed as conviction or dignity or freedom. And I think Satan believes every word he's saying, and that's exactly what makes him so persuasive. And that is very scary and very, very human. Number 2 for me is Judge Holden from Blood Meridian. Now, every time he appears, it feels like the laws of the world have shifted slightly, right? He's almost impossible to pin down. Is he a man? Is he a symbol? Is he something more, right? McCarthy never really tells you, and somehow I think that uncertainty makes him even harder to forget, in a sense, right? But I still don't think he has surpassed the final person on this list. And that, to me, of course, is the one and the only Iago from Shakespeare's Othello. Now, the thing about Iago is that he almost never really forces anyone to do anything. He just seems to notice the cracks that are already there. He notices Othello's jealousy, Cassio's pride, right? But he barely pushes. He just lets people destroy themselves. And I think that's why he still feels so modern. I think that's what makes him the greatest villain. The people who do the most damage in our lives usually aren't the loudest or the strongest. They're the ones who understand us well enough to turn us against ourselves. 400 years later, I still don't think anyone has written a villain more frightening than that. And I think that's the most frightening part about our lives in general, humanity in general. There's nothing scarier than being used against yourself, at least as I have thought. But of course, I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure there are many characters I've missed. Personally, I thought about Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes series. That was someone I initially included on this list, but I didn't think it was a good fit for this particular style that I was going for. But I would love to hear what you think.